But do you have like segments first and stuff like that?
I'm going to do an ad read. I'll do like 1 or 2 ad reads.
Gotcha. I thought last time you had something with call-ins where people told the story and.
We haven't been doing that as much.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do interviews.
Yep.
It's easier.
Sounds good.
I'm doing source bits first, and then I'm doing share file second.
You're gonna tease the source bits one because it's a demo. Mark from source bits is coming on at the end of the show.
Oh, okay.
And then Luis, who did InstaPlayer, he worked with them. Source bits built them InstaPlayer.
Oh, okay.
They're both gonna come on at
All right.
the end of the show. But if you could tease it in the beginning, just to say, you know.
Okay. Meyer. I need a pen. That's a marker. Yeah, don't bite pens, dude. It's just horrific. Am I biting pens? Yeah, so this is the new studio.
Nice.
2 conference room, or an office and a conference room. We just knocked the wall down. This is Karen.
David, nice to
Hey,
meet
nice
you.
to meet you.
Thanks for coming all the way.
Sure, absolutely. It's not that far.
No, so the set's changed a little bit since the last
Yeah,
time we
yeah.
were on.
Yeah.
Much better mics.
Who's in the?
Good.
Oh, is that the call later?
Yeah, that's what we're supposed to do.
Oh, okay. He doesn't have to be on for the whole.
Can you
Oh,
check that
okay.
I don't have anything in my teeth? That's going to show up on HD.
I gotta get my teeth cleaned. I need a little yellow there from the coffee.
All right.
Whitening strips, Jason.
I have them. I have to use them.
Do you need anything else to drink, David?
Nope.
You want
Water
a tea,
is
coffee, you know?
water's great.
Okay.
Well, you know, the fans are excited.
Yeah.
You have,
That'll be
you know,
fun.
yours was the favorite episode up until Jason interviewed Chris Sacca last week.
Yeah, I
now
gotta
it's
watch
tied.
that one. I heard a
Yeah,
bunch
he
of
was
people
incredible.
talk about
Yeah.
what was the show on, what was the topic, or
Just his career, you know, it's always the same.
Yep.
Like the person's career and
Right.
then what they think about what's going on in the world.
Yep.
And so if you do that combination, like, and the person's honest and authentic and no bullshit, which is you,
Right.
both
Yep.
of you have that like sort of authenticity.
Right.
And actually that works pretty well with me as an interviewer because I like to sort of like have like a raw discussion about stuff.
for sure.
Then the audience loves it. They love
Awesome.
authenticity. They love honesty. They love
yeah.
that kind of stuff. So I think talking about the Yahoo stuff, which you've been very vocal about.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
It would be
great.
great to hear about how 37 Signals is doing too. I know it's been crushing it.
Sure.
Are you considered you're the co-founder of 37 Signals, right?
Well, it
He
sort of
brought you
depends
in.
on how you define it.
Yeah. Partner.
We say partner because
Yeah,
the
he was
company started actually in '99, and we didn't. I'm co-founder of the product
Right.
company 37 Signals, not of the web consultancy 37
Got it.
Signals.
Got it.
Just kept the same name.
Okay. Let's do it.
You ready?
I'm ready. Hannemeyer. I always get that wrong. Hannemeyer. Hannemeyer?
Heinemeyer.
Heinemeyer.
It's I.
Hein.
Hein.
You got it right
Hein.
the first time last
There you
year,
go.
3 years ago.
Heinemeyer.
Yep, that's
Heinemeyer.
good.
Hi.
Oh, don't worry. It's not like the audience knows how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Heinemeyer.
So-
You know, Calacanis is pronounced a certain way. I like to make sure I get it right.
Right.
Heinemeyer. I think it's like if it's their name, you should take the time to get it right. Like I
Yeah.
have like Indian guys who come on the show and they're just like, just call me Sal, you know, and I'm like,
Right.
well, what is their actual,
Right.
you know, what is your actual name? I
Yep.
want to say your actual name because your mom's going to watch it at some
Right.
point. And I want to make sure she doesn't think I'm a jerk.
Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekend for a free $200 credit.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by ShareFile from Citrix. Secure file transfer built for business. Visit sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TWiST for a free 30-day trial. And by SourceBits. Visit sourcebits.com to begin your mobile app development journey.
Hey, everybody. It's another exciting episode of This Week in Startups. Today on the program, David Heinemeyer. I got it right.
That's right.
Heinemeyer got it right. Heinemeyer Hansson is back on the program. As you remember, he was on episode 47 years ago, 3 years ago, and he tore it up. We had an amazing debate and discussion about startups and how to build them. He's the creator of Ruby on Rails, one of the partners at 37 Signals, and lives an amazing life and has a lot of great opinions about startups and how to build them. We're going to get into it. Round two. DHH and Jason, This Week in Startups. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, it's This Week in Startups, episode number 337. Just 290 episodes ago or so, David Hansson was on the program. He's a partner at 37 Signals. Of course, you know, Basecamp and High-Rise and all these amazing products they've built, and what a great company they've built. Jeff Bezos is an investor. He also created Ruby on Rails. And when he was on the program, you know, this we're now, 4 years into doing This Week in Startups. We've had everybody on the program. But if you ask who's your favorite episode, for 300 or so episodes, it was almost unanimously David on the program. Then Gary Vaynerchuk became very popular as a guest on the program, and of course Chris Sacca. And those were I think some of the three leveling up moments of the program. The program was going at a nice clip. And then David was on, and everybody said, wow, what a great debate, what honesty. You don't really get that too much in the media space where people are just talking about something. And two people who, let's face it, have actually done it, right? I mean, David's built a lot of companies, and he's, you know, got real technology chops having built Ruby on Rails. And I built a couple companies in my day, so it was like, you know, hey, this is a great episode. That really informed my thinking about the show of just really getting into it. And so he's going to be on the program today, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. His, you know, where he thinks startups are today. He's written a couple of books. He was tweeting about Yahoo and the remote work stuff pretty passionately. So there's a lot to get into today. A couple of pieces of housekeeping. We're going to have the second annual Launch Education and Kids Conference. A year ago, Microsoft was like, hey, you can use our space in the Valley. You know, we love what you do at launch. And I said, great, I have an idea. Maybe we should do a one-day conference on education and kids, because I personally found that interesting. And it went so well, we decided to do it again. So it's the second annual Launch EDU conference. Go to launchedu.co. We're looking for teachers. We're looking for educators. We're going to give them scholarships, so they'll get a free ticket to the event. And we're looking for startups who are trying to reinvent education and entertain and inform kids in any way. So it could be hardware, it could be software, it could be tools for an educator to use to grade tests. It could be anything from the Khan Academy to Mind Snacks to any of these great startups. So if you have anything like that you can inform us of, just email team@launch.co, or edu@launch.co. I think both of those work. And go to launchedu.co. Really, we need teachers. And thanks to Pearson and School Messenger for underwriting the event. So the event is in the black because we have these great sponsors. So it's going to be a great 2 days, June 26th and 27th. I'll be there. And SourceBits, of course, was a great sponsor of the Launch Festival, which just passed. 6,000 people came. And we had this great crowdfunding app that they built for us that people really engaged with. Of course, the SEC didn't get their together to let people invest, non-accredited investors, non-rich people invest in startups. Of course, because if you're not rich, well, you have no way of knowing how to invest your own money, except in Vegas, right? Or on drugs or alcohol or cars or burning it or putting it on black on the roulette wheel. I mean, really, come on, SEC, get your sugar together. I almost cursed. But anyway, SourceBits is going to show us we'll just do a recap of what happened with that crowdfunding app. A lot of people participated. Millions of dollars in virtual currency were actually invested. And next year, we're going to try to have people, when they sign up for the event, put $100 in real dollars into the app. So that'd be the 2.0 crowdfunding app. And while they're sitting there in the audience, they're going to say, with a little dial on their iPhone or their Android phone, hey, I want to put $50 into that company. I want to put $25 into that company and take a flyer. And who knows, maybe they would do that with Yammer and turn their $25 into $25,000, which is what would have probably happened if that was the case. So thanks, SourceBits. And sponsoring the program today, so SourceBits will be on at the end of the show to talk about that. So stick around. ShareFile by Citrix. Why use ShareFile? Well, most business emails include some sort of attachment, a document, a spreadsheet, PowerPoint. And we need that information to be received and get in the right hands and remain confidential. That's why ShareFile is an important is important for every business. You can do files of almost any size. That's the highest degree of security. You can track the progress of your files, access files from any computer or mobile device. And we use it here at This Week in Startups. You can see on my computer here all of the different, like I was just talking about SourceBit, all the clips and the images and the audio files are all saved on ShareFile. And we can watch the tracking to see who uploaded, who downloaded, really granular accountability of each of the files in the system. And we're, of course, sharing very large, huge 800 megabit all the ads. Like, so when we have a sponsor and they have a spot, we put it right in there and we can easily send it to people. And you can request a file, which is really cool. So we can say, hey, send us your ad for the show. And somebody uploads a couple 100 megabyte file, all securely. No credit card required. Go to sharefile.com, click the radio microphone button, and use the promo code TWiST for your 30-day free trial. And if you join ShareFile now, you can join the TWiST Club. Step 1, sign up for ShareFile using the promo code TWiST. And Step 2, send us a request file link to sharefile@launch.co. That's right, request a file link to sharefile@launch.co. And we'll send you the top 10 moments in This Week in Startup history. So the top 10 questions that have ever been asked and answered on the program, we're going to send you that top 10 file, only available if you join ShareFile with the code TWiST. Thank you so much to ShareFile for sponsoring independent media like This Week in Startups. I think when you were on the program, David, we didn't even have ads.
I don't think so, no.
We didn't have ads.
No.
Now sold out for 6 months in advance.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
It's good because, you know, we only accept advertising from people if we use the product. Like, it's like a whitelisted advertising space.
Yep.
You're not an advertising guy, though, right? I don't perceive that you like advertising.
It's not a big part of what I do.
Right. People pay you for your product.
Yes. We do take advertising on sort of the media parts we have, like Signal versus Noise participates in the deck, which sort of has a similar idea, only accept advertising from people you'd actually buy stuff from.
Right. You don't want to dilute the brand. So what have you been up to in the 3 years since we had the last episode? I mean, you, like me, I'm assuming were shocked at the amount of people commenting on the episode. I mean, to this day, they tweet the two of us, because you're at DHH and I'm at Jason on Twitter. And we get, what, once a week somebody comments on the show, like, oh, I just watched it. We're like, really? Where have you been for 2 years?
Right.
It's pretty amazing.
Well, stuff on the internet lives forever. It's really cool that you can put something like that out that's not topical in the sense that it's dated to a specific time period. I think the things we talked about were fundamentals, profits, business, and so forth. These are things that are not about 2010. It's just as relevant in 2013. In many ways, it's even more relevant now, I think. Sort of just looking at what's unfolded in the past 3 years.
Hey, what do you perceive? I mean, we've had the last 3 years since we talked, and we're talking about, in that episode, venture capital funded businesses versus actual real businesses and having revenue and people. I mean, but we did see in that time period, I think both of us were right to a certain extent. You saw things like Instagram get sold for $1 billion with zero revenue, but then you've also seen juggernauts like Dropbox, Evernote, just ringing the register for hundreds of millions of dollars.
And I think the things that stick around and are still going to be a brand worth caring about in 10 years from now are those things like Dropbox and so forth. I think what's interesting in those 3 years and mostly recently is that batch of IPOs we had about a year ago. We had Groupon, we had Zynga, and we had all of these companies that went public.
Facebook.
And the companies that went public with no profits, pretty much all of them are, if not dead, they're dying, or seriously wounded.
Right.
And even
a lot of them are wounded,
a lot of them seriously wounded. Like Groupon just kicked out the CEO,
brutal,
and like they still have no clue on how to make money out of it. Zynga is sort of just in a tailspin of its own. Even Facebook, which underlyingly is a pretty good business, was just a perfect example of a good business is not necessarily a good stock. It all depends on the price. You can have the best business in the world be the worst stock in the world if the price is not right. And I think that we have these cycles, right? So the same themes come up over and over and over again. You see something like Facebook and like, oh, this looks like a great business. Let's pay 100 times their earnings for it. And that's always a bad investment. It's never going to pan out.
And it doesn't seem like people learn, although...
No, they don't. Absolutely not.
But this time around, it wasn't as bad as Web 1.0, at least. We didn't have, 150 or 250 companies go public that all wound up struggling like Groupon has.
No, but if you look at the batch of companies that went public around the same time, the Zynga and the Groupon and so forth,
Yeah, LinkedIn there
Pandora and LinkedIn, you have there's sort of two groups. There are the ones that the market found out about, like Groupon and Zynga and so on, where they were like, we were so excited about this for about 5 minutes, and then we actually looked at the numbers and they were like, holy shit, this looks horrible.
Right.
And then there are companies that continue to amaze me in how they defy the gravity of the market, which is LinkedIn, Salesforce, other companies like that are, in my mind, like the same kinds of companies in that they're
You think that they're
houses
you
of
think,
cards.
You think LinkedIn's a house of cards? I mean, they have real revenue at that company.
They have real
reoccurring subscription revenue, just like 37 Signals.
Groupon had amazing real revenue. The
Well, what was the
issue is
problem
not getting
then?
revenue.
Right.
It's getting money you can keep.
The earnings.
Exactly. It's all about earnings. As Groupon showed, if you're willing to spend $1.40 to buy $1, you can buy a lot of dollars.
Right.
There's a lot of that on the table.
Felt
it just
a little
ends
bit like a pump and dump.
Yes. And in my mind, a lot of the strategies that are around Groupon, the sort of accounting shenanigans that they were pulling, there are other companies that pull those today. Salesforce, I think, is a perfect example.
Really?
They keep pulling the same sort of accounting schemes where, let's not count stock compensation, for example. Even though it's a huge chunk of our expenses, we're going to sort of push that off the books, and then we're going to publish these numbers saying, we were profitable if you don't count all the stuff.
Right.
Groupon tried to do that with marketing expenses, right? It was the
Right.
biggest joke ever. If you don't count all the money we have to spend to acquire customers, we're actually profitable.
Well, they were sort of saying, let's spend it, let's take that $100 it costs to acquire and push it out over a 5-year lifespan. It was ridiculous.
They weren't even doing that in the beginning. In the
Right.
beginning, they were just saying, this is a non-recurring spend. All the companies or all the customers we're acquiring, they're just going to be with us forever, so this is not really a material thing you need to count. That's not how it works. I mean, dollars are dollars if you spend them on stock compensation or if you spend them on acquiring customers, they're spent.
Right.
You can sort of menage all these numbers, but I think that's the one good thing about the stock market is that we have these things called GAAP numbers, which is sort of like established accounting principles for how you have to report things. The shame of it is that companies like Salesforce, like Groupon, get away with basically discarding those numbers and saying, here are the GAAP numbers. Pay no attention to them. Here are the numbers I want you to see, which are the bullshit numbers that where we deduct all sorts of things that make no sense in deducting.
That came back to bite Groupon in a major way because people were like, what is this accounting stuff? So in a way, the market had a, fool me once with Web 1.0, shame on you, fool me twice. So it felt like very few people got fooled.
But
the stock came crashing down very quickly.
It did, but a lot of people got fooled. Like for that stock to crash, what was it? At one point, I think they were valued at $28 billion, right?
Yeah. I mean,
now they're at 3 in market cap.
And what did Google offer?
$25 billion disappeared in market cap. So obviously, a lot of people didn't get
a lot of those
didn't get fooled or did get fooled right away, right? And then the money just disappeared. I think actually the more interesting case is Facebook, because Facebook actually never managed to really fool anybody. Even on day one, they ended up trading at less than what they were offered at, and now they're trading on, $25?
Yeah.
But I think the more important thing is that the market is very sort of singular focused. It'll focus on one company and call it out, Groupon, hey, you're counting shenanigans are no good. We're not going to value you at what you're asking for. And then you can look at another company like Salesforce. I keep picking on Salesforce because I think that they're one of the most egregious violators of this in terms of accounting shenanigans. And they can just go on their merry way, and nobody gives a damn, right?
Because it has growth and it has earnings, even though
it doesn't have earnings. It has growth, and it has revenues, but so do all these other things, right? And I think that that's what's so pathetic in my mind about all this financial commentary is that people are such freaking cheerleaders. They love to cheer on a good stock when it's growing, regardless of whether the fundamentals are there or not.
The
and
media
then as soon as it crashes, they're like, well, this was a terrible idea. Everybody knew that Groupon was shit. Like, who in their right mind would jump into that when freaking, if you look at all the commentary that was on the financial, this is like, the fastest growing business in the world.
Yeah, that was
which it was in terms of revenue. Just, again, doesn't matter if you can't keep profits.
Right. And to your point, if it's the fastest growing business because you're selling $2 bills for $1,
right?
I don't think you have to be a genius to make that business scale.
Right.
You can have a pretty long line of customers.
Yes.
Willing to trade in $1 for a $2 bill.
But what fascinates me here is that media commentary, that they're so willing to accept that storyline for as long as the game is going around, regardless of what the fundamentals
How bad
say.
is the media today in the United States, do you think? I mean...
Well, I think it's pretty bad, but I think it's not even just a media thing, it's people. If you look even on Twitter about people who chime in and say, oh, yeah, now they're shit, nobody was saying before Groupon went public, right? I wrote up this whole piece, pass on this deal, I called it, right? Where I went through the numbers. It's not complicated stuff. If you look at an IPO prospectus, the numbers, because they have to oblige to these GAAP numbers, they're not hard to compute. They do all these sort of shenanigans to fool you from the numbers that are actually there. It's not that hard to figure out. Anyway, so I published this piece. Only a few people were like, oh yeah, that sounds reasonable.
People,
whatever.
what was the reaction to when you did this pass on this deal? I'm pulling it up right here on TechMeme. When you did this, I mean, what was the response from people who were shareholders of Groupon? Because I remember reading this and going, wow, you did that on the night they were going to go public or when the S1 got filed or something like that?
I think sometime during the S1 filing period. So it was before they actually started trading. And other people did this too. Like, it's not like I'm doing something magical. I don't have even much of a background in this. The point is you don't even need that.
Yeah.
These numbers are simple enough to figure this stuff out. So I just looked through the numbers, and it didn't make any sense.
Costing them $1.43 to make $1.
Right.
And it's not getting any cheaper.
The mechanics did not make any sense. They were already at great scale. It didn't make any sense at that scale, and obviously that business is now failing. They're trying all these other things now to sort of pivot the business into selling goods and so forth, but that's just a different kind of business. The only reason they're doing that is because the core thing that people invested in is shit. Like the daily deals business of offering 50% off just doesn't scale, even though it sounds intuitively like it should have, right?
Well, I mean, if you start thinking about this observation that, selling, $2 bills for $1, which is what we saw, in the early internet days with Cosmo and Urban Fetch.
Right.
People were delivering food for free, and it was costing them $10 to deliver, $20 in food, so they were just getting crushed. The real core issue seems to have been, forget about their business, what they were doing to those local businesses.
Right.
Because the local business was saying, we're going to give you 50% off dinner.
Yep.
So what could the margin at a restaurant be? 30% or 20%? So already they're losing money.
Absolutely.
But then of the remaining 50%, we're going to give half to Groupon.
Right.
So in actuality, the local business was giving up 75 cents on every dollar. No way for them to make money, and they're going to get the worst customers.
Right.
And they're going to be stigmatized as a failing business.
And I mean, I don't want to hate on the model too much in the sense that there are sort of slices where it makes sense. Like if you have a spa or something where it doesn't cost you incrementally to service another customer, you have a huge fixed base you have to monetize. But that story you pull out there, that's exactly the kind of stuff that should have been front and center before the IPO.
Right.
What I don't like about all this sort of media attention on it is that nobody pulls up these stories. They don't run through the numbers. They don't look at the consequences of the business until the business already looks like it's failing. Nobody wants to call out the shit that's shit before sort of it starts flying, right?
Right.
Like everybody's like, oh, this IPO. Let's get all excited about that. Let's pump it up. Oh, they could go to
and what do you think
50
that why
billion,
are the
blah, 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 blah.
journalists so lame these days? They just
Because
they don't have the
they're herd.
chops.
It's a herd.
Yeah.
So they see everybody sort of stampeding towards one conclusion, and they just all join in. That's easier and safer to do, because if you stick your neck out and actually run some counter-analysis to the prevailing meme right now, then you're running a risk. And then, of course, you also have to do just a modicum of independent research and work, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier just to like repeat the same story that's already there. Oh, this is the Wonder Kids from Chicago, which was what hurt me, was that I think Chicago's a great city. I think Chicago has a lot to teach entrepreneurs and startups, and Groupon was none of that. It was none of those core get down to it, let's make a real good business out of it lessons coming out of Chicago, and all of a sudden Chicago equals Groupon
Yeah,
because
well,
you
and
have
also-
this hugely growing company just
Largely the startup space, right? I mean, when these companies go public, they represent this wave of internet innovation. So it's
Right.
going to represent what you're doing in your career or I'm doing in mine. Everybody sort of gets associated with it.
Yep.
And then people say, oh, yeah, it's another dot-com bubble.
right.
And
And
then
that's
we-
exactly the sort of the tragedy of it.
Yeah.
That Chicago is going to be saddled with this sort of like, oh, Chicago, oh yeah, will
Groupon,
they have Groupon?
scam, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is such
They
a
could have
shame.
avoided it too, couldn't they have? If they just said, let's grow a little bit slower. We don't need to be the fastest growing business ever. And I guess what do you think their thinking was? Like, we're going to be able to spend $1.43 to make $1,
You know, I'll tell
and
you,
then we'll flip
I'll
it,
tell
or
you
they were just
exactly
trying to get it out
what
the door.
What the thinking was, let's take the money and run. If you look at how that deal went down, what happened just before the IPO,
The $1 billion private
yeah,
round,
exactly.
yeah.
That people just cashed out and took the money and ran.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to end up with. And I think that's what really leaves a sour taste in the mouth of many, right?
Yeah.
It's not that, so here you have a brand new thing, it's growing rapidly. It's a risk. A lot of businesses are risks, and this
Yeah,
is
of
certainly
course.
huge risk. What feels
And the good
icky-
businesses are a huge risk.
Yeah,
right?
but what feels icky is when somebody then says, well, let's just saddle all that risk on the public markets, and I'm going to take my $350 million and just kick back, right?
Yeah, we're
Because
gonna-
then, like, that just doesn't feel right, especially when the business actually needs that money. Like, the business continues to hemorrhage money, and certainly was at the time. They needed that 800 million or whatever it was that got
Yeah,
cashed out.
and maybe
right?
that would have saved them. Maybe they could have figured it out. I mean, it felt like to me like they just put the thrusters on full blast to get public, and they just spent all their jet fuel where they could have just gone at 55 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour instead of trying to floor it to get to the finish line, and they would have actually been able to just manage that profitability issue.
Or they would have figured out earlier at less expense that this was not a sustainable model. Because I think that that's unfortunately the conclusion, because it's not just Groupon. If you look at Living Social, I mean, it's a shit show too.
Yeah.
So these
They
companies...
just got written down, right? Amazon wrote their investment down to like nothing.
Yes, and they just needed this emergency infusion of extra cash that got built as great confidence from our investors that they're willing to put more money into our shit show at onerous terms. I mean, come on. So that's another sort of fact of it that I was saying. It'd be fun to get Fuck Company back. Remember
Yeah,
Fuck
Phil
Company
Kaplan.
from-
Yeah, Pud.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because you have these sort of proclamations from the CEO saying, oh, the sun is shining, everything is wonderful,
Yeah.
and great confidence, and at the same time, shit is just crumpling under their feet, and that's what just makes the whole thing comical.
How did you guys know at 37 Signals that software as a service, software in a cloud, was going to be such a huge hit? I mean, you came out before Dropbox, before Evernote, before Zendesk, before Yammer, at the same time as Salesforce?
I think Salesforce in some incarnations has been around since like 99 or so.
Ah,
so
okay.
we're certainly a little
Right. So
later than them.
right, Salesforce definitely gets points for that concept.
Absolutely.
Of renting the software or whatever. But how did you guys see that so early? And, you know, do you think that you leveraged it enough or that you could have leaned into it even more? Now when you see the rest of the success going on around you.
So first
You
of all,
define the category.
We didn't know anything. Like this wasn't us thinking, oh, if we look 5 years into the future, this thing is going to be huge.
Right.
Let's dive in on it. No, what we knew was developing for the web beats developing for the desktop.
Yeah.
Like that was plain and simple to me. There's just so many advantages of the web itself. So that had sort of proven itself.
The primary one being
You don't have to update.
The
Everybody,
updates, yeah.
like, there's nothing to install. We can update things without pushing stuff out. There's just all these wonderful benefits of it
Yeah.
works on multiple platforms, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
All the benefits of why is web software great, right? Those we knew in 2004. So those weren't sort of a big deal. So the only thing was really there was people willing to buy business software like this. At that time, not a whole lot of businesses were buying software like this.
from the bottom up. Like I'm an individual
bottom up.
inside a company and I'm just going to take my credit card out and
Right.
buy something for $50 a month, not go to the IT manager.
Right. But that was exactly, if you look at sort of trace it back to the consumer, in 95 or whenever, when Amazon was trying to convince everybody to put in their credit card online, that sounded scary, right? So it was just sort of a lacking effect, and you saw, okay, Amazon solved the confidence problem. People were willing to do this. Of course it's going to be solved on the business side too.
Right.
And also, the second part of it, we had very sort of small ambitions in the beginning. We just wanted something. Our initial goal was, can we get something that people will pay us $4,000 a month? Can we get enough customers that they'll pay us $4,000 a month?
In aggregate, total.
In aggregate, total.
Right.
Then we'd be like, hey, this is doing pretty well.
50 grand a year.
Yeah, exactly.
You're balling.
We're balling because the whole thing was not a bet all or nothing risk.
Right.
We didn't mortgage our house, put in everything that we had on this one bet that if it didn't turn out, then we were going to be broke ass poor, out on the street, no health insurance, no nothing, right? So we didn't take any risk in the classical sense of like I'm personally risking my well-being to do this startup, which is one thing I often rant about is that mythology that you have to do that to be a real startup person. You have to be almost going to the soup kitchen or ramen noodle, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. I'm sick and tired of hearing of that storyline because it's just such a narrow definition of, sure, some people went through that and good on them that they pulled themselves up and out of that. But it gives such a exclusionary club feel to the whole startup thing that there are only people who are willing and able to run those extreme risks are accepted into our club. Bullshit. We ran 0 financial risk. We kept all our consulting customers such that if Basecamp had flunked out, we would have wasted 6 months of our spare time. Big effing deal.
Who cares? Yeah.
Exactly.
You would have learned something, and you would have had some fun building it, and you know,
and
nothing's lost.
That's how people can line up. The majority of startups in this web space can be lined up like that, like 0 personal risk.
And the consulting is such an underutilized strategy. I know for my first businesses, I was doing consulting while starting those businesses. So I was making money from future investors and clients working for them.
Right.
And then investing, you know, a couple of $1,000s a month in my product. And people, it's the new generation of entrepreneurs, they seem like if they don't get their venture round or their angel round closed on AngelList, they're not willing to do it. They're not real entrepreneurs, are they?
Well, I mean, sure, this is turning into kids nowadays, but
well, I mean,
I think
this idea that I'm not going to actually pursue the opportunity because somebody else didn't back up the Brinks truck.
Right.
There is a mentality I find with half the entrepreneurs.
I think that's damaging. Not the least damaging because the number of people that has access to that VC angel bubble sphere is a very exclusionary, mostly San Francisco and surrounding areas sort of bubble. There's so many people around, not just the U.S., around the world.
Canada,
they just don't
Denmark,
have access to, exactly, they don't have access to these sort of lines of capital. So if they think that the only way you can do this kind of stuff is if you do have that access, then you're like, well, that's not for me. When it couldn't be further from the truth. Even just from the 3 years since we had the last conversation here, it's gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It's
unbelievable now,
it's
isn't
unbelievable, right? It doesn't cost anything in terms of hardware, in terms of software, the approach, everything has gotten so much more productive. So
it's amazing. I was on a call today for the new project I'm working on, inside.com. And there was something I wanted to do that somebody had built an API for. And I was on the phone with them and I said, how much is this going to cost me if I want to do this many queries, this often, you know, for this many verticals, whatever. And they said, oh, that'd be like $3,000 a month. And I was like, $36,000. I was estimating that I would have to have 4 or 5 developers full-time on this. So well over $500,000 for a year, and an opportunity cost of a year to build what they were willing to offer me for $3,000 a month. Now, I hope they're not listening. But they have a competitor who's offering the same thing, and now I've got the 2 of them who are going to, you know, fight with each other to get between $2,000 and $3,000. It is amazing.
Marvel at the progress of capitalism, basically.
Unbelievable.
And the improvements that brings to it, and just the lowering costs that we get constantly from all these things. So it's never been more true that you don't need to risk everything to start a new business. And tomorrow, it'll be even more true than it was today. Like, the cost of these things just plummet. It's funny because On the technology side, it's the same thing too. At 37 Signals, for the last 5 or 6 years, we've talked about sharding, right?
Yeah, sure. Sharding a database.
You have one database, and at some point you get so much load on that database, you need multiple databases, and you need to separate your customers across them.
Right.
And
This is
kind of a big
people with the
hassle.
last name between A and D.
Exactly,
This
exactly.
is the last name
Yes.
between E and H.
And it sucks. From
Disaster.
a technical
Yeah.
perspective, it complicates matters.
One of the
endlessly,
big
right?
issues, yeah.
So if you cannot do that, huge win, right?
Right.
I mean, seriously, for the last
You
5
don't have to
6 years,
recode the entire database.
Exactly. For the last 5 6 years, we would think, all right, we're going to have to do it pretty soon.
Yeah, press the shard button.
And what happens? We keep getting bailed out by Moore's Law.
Right.
Now it's at the point where it's not even a conversation anymore.
Yeah.
We can keep on one database, I'm almost willing to bet, forever.
Right.
Like, we don't need to. The progress we're seeing in SSDs and the amount of memory you can throw at these machines and so on and so forth, you just don't need to do it.
And MySQL is getting better at like replicating and that kind of stuff.
All the stuff is getting better all the time.
Right.
So you can't base your assumptions neither on finance and capital or on hardware costs or even on how long it takes to implement something. That information grows stale incredibly quickly.
That's the thing I was referring back to this conversation I had with a third-party provider. I was just thinking, my God, this is going to take me 12 months to launch.
Right.
Now I'm like, it's going to take 12 weeks.
Right.
You know, like, Jesus, this is 75% less time.
Right.
And all those opportunities are out there. Let's talk about human capital. Marissa fired 350 people for working from home. You guys are a virtual company.
Yep.
37 Signals, everybody works from wherever they want. You're famous for hiring the best people, letting them work whatever hours they want,
I'm
4
gonna
days
even
a week,
take,
whatever.
Offense to some of those things.
Well, okay.
Yep. Carry
Which
on.
piece? Well, anyway, you're famous for, I think, being a champion of employee freedom.
Yep.
And employee empowerment.
Yes.
And trusting your employees and hiring the best people and having them be very mobile, whatever. So you were pretty brutal to Marissa on Twitter. Mm-hmm. What's your position on what she did? Why is it so wrong?
Well, I think she's just going around it in the wrong way. There's no arguing that Yahoo has deep-seated, serious trouble. Like, they've gone through, 6 CEOs in 6 years or something like that.
Probably less. If you count the interims, probably
right.
I mean, just think about this. It was Ross Levinson, the jokester before it who lied on his resume.
Right.
What was his name? Scott or something?
I don't even remember.
Was
I
from
can't keep
PayPal guy.
track.
And Marissa, that was 3 in a year, I think.
Right.
Or a year and a half.
So it's obviously, the organization has some serious problem. So nobody's faulting her that she wants to do something about that.
Sure.
She should. That's why she's being brought in. That's why she's being paid the big money and so forth. But we can still talk about the tactics. Are the things she's trying to do actually helpful and likely to succeed and make things better? So showing up as she did and basically looking out her window of the corner office and looking at the parking lot in the morning and see, slow to fill up. It's quick to dissipate in the evening. And looking at the VPN logs for remote workers, it's a very shallow way of evaluating the problems your organization have. Because Yahoo has 11,000 employees or something like that, right?
Right. Facebook has like a third of that.
Right, and the same
Yeah.
revenue. But even if you look at those 11,000, I don't believe that those people are just inherently worse workers than everywhere else. They certainly have had some brain drain and so forth. The problem Yahoo has is sort of an organizational issue of they don't have a vision. They don't really know who they are. They don't really know who they want to be. Are they a technology company? Are they a media company? What are they? And all that stuff just seeps into the culture and corrupts it to the point that there's no natural intrinsic motivation for a lot of workers at Yahoo, I'm sure. When you don't know what your company stands for, where it's going, how does the thing I'm working on fit in?
Clarity.
Not motivating.
Clarity.
Yeah, you don't have clarity, you don't have motivation, you don't have intrinsic motivation to something to work on. So what's the consequence of that? Well, people start goofing off. Like, if they feel like my contribution is not valuable anyway, okay, maybe I'm not going to check in this morning or whatever, right?
Right.
So you have these things that then result in symptoms. Symptoms like, the remote workers are not checking in often enough on the VPN.
Right.
So what do you start doing? Well, you should start treating root causes, right? You should start treating, how do we fix the motivation? How do we make people super engaged instead of just whacking at symptoms? And that's what she's doing right now. She's whacking at symptoms and just saying, well, I can identify right now that some percentage of the remote workers are not putting in as many VPN hours as I thought or think that they should.
Right.
Thus, the whole idea is bust, and we can't have remote workers at all. I mean, come on.
Right.
Because
You've made it work with remote workers, correct?
tons of companies made it
What is
work
the
with
secret?
remote workers.
Because WordPress also has tremendous success. Matt Mullenweg has championed this in a major way. 300 people. I think maybe all the developers are almost all their developers are remote.
GitHub, another big example just in tech circles. But you can look at big stodgy companies too. Deloitte, IBM, American
that's
Assurance,
100%
Fidelity.
remote, yeah.
There's tons of companies who
hotels.
just discovered that being in the same space at the same time, not the key to producing whatever it is that we're producing. There are other ways to do these things. It's hilarious too, of course, that it's Yahoo. I mean, a company that's all about internet services and providing all these things that makes it easier for us to collaborate from wherever it is, saying, oh no, you have to be in the office from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right?
I think for her, it's so screwed up over there.
Yep.
Is the issue. This is because I agree with you. Like, it just felt like it didn't seem like it was done deftly or with care, because these are people's careers. And so I would have done it. I would have looked.
They didn't get fired. She said, start
We're
coming to
phasing
the
it out.
office or you're fired.
Right, which is the same thing.
For a lot of people.
For two-thirds of them, it's probably the same thing. So I felt like she was either trying to make a signal, like, this is getting serious, and I'm using this as a way to get serious. Like, there's carrots, you're all getting iPhones, and now there are sticks, which I do agree is like a low-level management technique, right? Like, coming out and being like, everybody gets an iPhone, it's a low-level management technique, right? It's like just basically you might as well give everybody a $500 bills and be like, I'm buying your happiness for an hour.
It's a trinket.
It's a trinket. And then there's the other, on the end, it's like, oh, there's a stick, whatever. And I think that she is just, it's such a mess that she doesn't have the time to do it properly, and she just said, screw it, just get rid of them. I'm not going to even deal with this issue. And I think she just took the shortcut. Or the other thing I thought might be happening is she's got to do, lay off half the company, a third of the company. So maybe this was just a quick way to do layoffs without thinking about it. But I mean, you would really need to evaluate each person, right? Because what if in those 350 is the person who creates the breakout feature or product? She may have just, and then they're over here trying to hire people. So what if you just alienated the person who is an introvert, who works from home, who's highly effective, and she's going to, the female developer who works from home into the night when her kids go to sleep and whatever, she's going to have the big breakthrough. That's the next viral thing that will make their new video products take off. You just cut her.
Of course it's going to happen. Out of 350 people, who nobody, I think,
10% are winners,
is going to say that 350 people, they're all shitty employees and they need to be
not
terminated.
possible.
Of course
10
not.
or 20 of those are stars. Gotta be, even at Yahoo if they're...
Yep, absolutely.
What's the secret to managing? Because people are scared of... I've done both. I had probably one of the largest workforces in editorial ever assembled with Weblogs Inc. We had 500 bloggers working from home. And then here at Mahalo, and now soon to be called Inside, I've had very strict work from home policy because I took the management technique that I just wanted to be in the room with everybody, but I'm actually starting to rethink it.
I think
what do you think the secret is?
I think the secret is, first of all, the problems that Yahoo faces right now are the things you need to solve. You need to have clarity. You need to make people feel like the work that they're doing actually matters and it's going somewhere.
Right.
If you don't have intrinsic motivation in the work itself, if you need to basically beat people into submission, beat them into making work happen, no, you're not a good place to work, period. You're not a good place for remote work, but you're not a good place to work,
And it's a sign that you've either picked the wrong mission or the wrong people.
Yes, or you just don't know what the fuck is going on, which I think is more likely the case of Yahoo. Like, you walk into, and this show has all these different things going on, like what matters, what doesn't matter, who are we, where we're going, blah, blah, blah.
Can you imagine you took that job?
Thank you.
What would that be like? Like, you go in, and there's 11,000 people working on how many unique projects?
Yep, it's
500?
Brutal.
What would you do?
Well, I think that the only sort of story I've seen that played out and worked was the Steve Jobs returning to Apple. They had a very sprawling product line, and what did he say? We're going to make 4 products. We're
quadrants.
Gonna make a laptop for consumers, a laptop for pros, a desktop for consumers, and a desktop for pros. Boom.
We're
4.
done.
That's it. Let's get to work, right?
Yeah.
And they cut out all the stuff. Even cut out things that were profitable somewhat. I'm sure the accounting's
Printers.
yeah, all the cameras, Newton,
yeah.
blah 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 blah. They had all these other products that just the company wasn't ready for that. When you have that much disarray, you need clarity of focus. You need a few things and do them extremely well. But that takes guts.
Yeah.
Like you have to axe things that people will care about.
Google's been doing that. Larry Page been doing that a lot, huh?
You Google Reader. I mean, people go up in arms when you ask things. The specifics of that situation, maybe they're different. Google is not the same shit show that Yahoo is. They're not in the same need of desperate measures. Just as Apple was in need of very desperate measures, Yahoo is in need of desperate measures, at least from a company culture perspective. Because the funny thing is that Yahoo actually continues to make money, right? So everybody's like, oh, Yahoo is like blah, 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 blah. They're doing so poorly, and still they have, 700 million people somehow using the services. So take that into consideration as well, right? It's not the same situation. It's not like they're just bleeding money left and right. They have a problem with focus, which is more of an issue of just what is this organization and how can we motivate our people, right? But
I was really upset about Google Reader. Then I realized I haven't used it for more than 1 hour in the last 3 years. But I had some data in it, so I kind of felt like,
nobody likes to see shit that they depend on or even feel like they depend on go away without their say in it.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is actually, we discontinued a couple of products recently.
Which ones and how'd you do it?
Backpack.
Yeah, I remember
We
Backpack.
stopped offering to new people, TWiST and Rightboard. But the critical thing I feel like we did right was to say, no new people can sign up for this, but everybody who's still on it, we're just going to support it. We're just going to continue to support it.
And so what was the thinking there?
It doesn't cost us that much.
It doesn't cost that much to support it.
What's really expensive in running these services is you have to keep scale as you're growing. You have to buy new software, hardware, and manage the ops. You have to deal with the bugs that invariably will spill out from launching new features and all that stuff.
Right.
If you stop launching new features and you stop growing, then it becomes a non-issue in many ways.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah, exactly. Set it and forget it, and it's just going to be there. And it's going to be there until, I don't want to say necessarily the last guy closes the lights or whatever, but there's no imperative for us to close it down. And I think it's a much more humane way of dealing with.
It's like a sunsetting.
It's a sunset, but it's a sunset without it actually going so dark you can't sort of see the product.
It's got to be a better metaphor.
Yeah.
It's almost, sunsetting is nice because it sounds soft and we all like them, but there's a better metaphor out there. So how big is 37 Signals now, and how many customers? Is it 9 figures in revenue now? 8 figures? 10 figures? Where are you?
Well, the good thing about being private is
you
that you don't have to subject your financial information to public scrutiny.
But it's
which is funny and, of course, sort of hypocritical of me that I rag on public companies all the time, but I'm not sharing my
Well, we know
numbers.
there's millions of users of the product.
Yes,
we know
for
that
sure.
because you've said that publicly.
I mean,
and then if people are paying tens of dollars a month and you have millions of customers, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is a large amount of money.
We're doing very well. I mean, we've been profitable since day one. We continue to be profitable. We have 36 or 37 people right now. 36. We're hiring number 37.
Does that mean you're going to just keep it to 37 just to effort people and everybody else going to be freelancers?
We're intentionally trying to keep it as low as possible. I love working in a small company.
Yeah, it's
I
so
love
much better.
not
Why?
having layers of things. So we try very, very hard to keep as few heads as possible in the company, and then just profitability. I love, as we talked about. So be the most profitable company you can per head, but in absolute numbers, it's not that interesting.
So instead of the founders there selling the company, which you guys have had many opportunities to sell it, you just take distributions or just pay yourselves well?
Yes.
So every year, just big
distribution.
distributions.
Yep. I mean, to me, that's what companies are supposed to do. Like, a company exists from a financial perspective to generate profits that its owners will get to keep. And that's the part that is so screwed up in a lot of companies on Wall Street right now, that you have all these big companies that exist not to create earnings that the owners can get to keep, but to entertain management. And I think I rag on Salesforce a lot, but I also want to give Amazon some heat on this. Even though Jeff Bezos invested in 37 Signals a long time ago, Amazon, it's a fascinating company on the stock market for me. In their entire history, they've generated something like $1.5 billion in earnings for owners of the stock to keep. They're basically running it as what was something saying?
trust?
A charity for
Yeah.
the benefit of consumers.
Right.
Bezos has a great quote on this. Your margin is minor opportunity. It's their explicit goal to sort of minimize margins because that's how they're going to increase the share and be better for consumers and so on. My question is like, what is that long goal? How long does it have to take before you flip the magical switch where owners of the companies will actually get to retain some profits?
Right.
So far, the market has given Amazon, how long have they been public? Since 94, 93?
Yeah, it's 15 years, almost 20.
A very, very long time, right?
Yeah.
And
can look it
they're
up.
still giving it the benefit of the doubt.
Well, because the growth and the product line is amazing. I mean, you think pound for pound as an entrepreneur, you know,
But again, what is that?
the number one cloud computing platform, the number one e-commerce platform, and the number 2 e-reader behind Apple. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Very impressive.
On a
and they
product
make very
basis.
good stuff. I'm a huge fan of Amazon, the product. I love them as
You better be. You invested all that money in your company.
And I buy all my shit from Amazon. But
Right.
if I was an investor in Amazon,
Yeah, it's
I'd
kinda
be
like-
like, okay, guys, you've had, what, 15, 16 years?
$118 billion market cap.
Right,
And
when
if
is
they...
that money coming back to daddy?
Yeah.
Like, when am I going to get something out of this? And I think that that's just the weird thing to me about the stock market. Sometimes they can have infinite patience with companies like Amazon.
Yeah.
And other times they can have no patience at all. You can miss one quarter
Yeah.
on your numbers, and they're like, boom, you're done.
I
Get
think
outta
it's
here.
because they have such a loved product, and the market is so huge for e-commerce that they're like, yeah, if you want to live off 1%, 2% margins for a couple more years and just build that scale,
But
then
what is that couple more years? That's what I'm questioning. It's been 15.
Well, they
Is it
did
gonna
raise
be
the
another
price.
3? Is it going to be another 5? It's going to be another
I
15?
don't know. I mean, it's very interesting because do you think if they raised the prices, they must know this, right? If they raised the margin, if they doubled their margin, would they lose half their customers?
I'm sure they probably know. But
But if they didn't,
right, when are they going to make some money?
but if they doubled their margins and didn't lose half their customers, wouldn't that be better for
win.
the shareholders, right? It'd be like a huge
Absolutely.
win.
And you'd think that at some point, shareholders are going to be like, give me my money back.
Right.
And that's just what's fascinating to me when we talk about this stock market stuff is you look at a company like Apple, right? Apple in about 1 week generates as much profit as Amazon has ever generated.
Unbelievable.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, how are they not worth so much more than they're
trillion.
worth?
Yeah.
Right?
They're worth like 300 million now, 400 million compared to.
Which is what, 3 times Amazon? Or
Yeah,
2
3 times Amazon, but they're making 100 times the
Right. Exactly.
the earnings.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
$140 What do you think Apple should do now? Because, you know, the platform wars are such that Google is making devices and has a mobile OS. We never thought we'd see that. Amazon is doing the same. Amazon is doing streaming content. You know, Google is doing streaming.
Yep.
I mean, everybody's doing everybody's business. It's a singularity. What does Apple have to do to maintain their position? I mean, after Steve Jobs' passing, because Steve Jobs was the secret weapon.
Well, in the short term, not a goddamn thing. They're doing everything as right as any company in the history of commerce has ever done.
Right.
If you look at their numbers, they're so large that I think people do not comprehend just how an amazing job
Yeah.
Apple has done in terms of generating profits.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. It's so outrageous that even though they're only paying a 15% payout rate
Yeah.
in terms of dividends,
Yeah.
they have something like a 2.5% yield.
Yeah.
Like, this is the best company in the history of consumer electronics. It's the best company in the history of pretty much anything short of commodities like oil or whatever, right?
And their PE is only 10.
That
Price earnings
boggles the
10.
mind to me.
Yeah.
Like, are people really thinking that the empires that they've built up recently, the iPad, the iPhone, and so on, they're going to crash and burn overnight like that?
Yeah.
No, of course it's not going to happen.
Facebook PE, 1,700.
I mean, and that's where we get back to this whole thing about the media's influence and all this,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't take a genius to look at these numbers. You didn't have to run any hard
No, that took
calculations
about
to
7
look at these things and just go, hey, wait a minute, something does not compute here. Just doesn't make any sense.
You think they're going to come out with another breakthrough device? This wristband, TV?
Well, the funny thing is, I don't care. Like, if you look actually at the history of breakthrough devices, so they come out with the iPod in, 2001. Then they come out with the iPhone in 2007.
Something like that, yeah.
Huge gap, 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years.
Is anybody saying that Apple was a shit company between 2001 2006?
No.
They're amazing, right?
And they cannibalized the iPod with the iPhone.
Yeah.
They knowingly did that.
And they were happy with it.
Yeah.
from 2007 till what, 2009 or whenever the iPad
2009,
came out.
2010, yeah.
Like any other company in the world would be so lucky to have as many breakthrough categories established within a decade.
You think they can
as
keep
Apple.
going with just the ones they have?
History tells us that they can. Look at freaking Microsoft.
Right.
Microsoft is still a money-making machine.
Unbelievable.
They're built off Windows and Office.
Yeah.
Products from the 90s.
Yeah.
They're still
80s.
milking those.
80s.
I mean, it's so mind-boggling to me that people can at the same time recognize, oh, that's true. Google, same thing.
Yeah.
They built AdWords in what, 2001?
They bought
or
it.
whenever
from,
that was,
applied
right?
semantics and everything. Yeah, they bought that. Yeah,
That's the one product that makes all the freaking money.
99% of their
Like,
revenue,
you look at it, oh, they have Android now. They don't make shit off Android.
$0.0.
Exactly.
They lose money on Android.
And by the way, so does everybody else in the mobile space except Samsung. Samsung is the only company besides Apple that can actually make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And they make far less money than Apple does. Apple rakes in, what, 70% of the
ridiculous.
phone market's profits?
Yeah. I think Samsung's going to be up and coming because I think they're going to, when they do their own OS or their own flavor of Android and the Android apps are allowed on it and they start streaming your TV together with your thing. I mean, I don't know if the Koreans
I think that's
can
when
do it.
they're going to crash and burn.
Yeah, you think that's...
My prediction is...
I think it's a risk, clearly.
I think it's not just a risk. I think it's a huge risk because as far as I've seen so far, Samsung does not do software.
Well, if you look at their TVs, they're terrible.
TWiST and all that shit is just terrible.
Smart
People
Hub.
are like, oh, could you please not load up my Android phone with all the crap that you're putting on it?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, Android's not that good to begin with.
Yeah.
Like,
so if you're saying get your stuff off my Android device,
I mean, you know, it's really bad.
that's really bad.
Right?
It's like get your tomatoes off my McDonald's hamburger.
And when you then have
Gotta be a pretty bad tomatoes.
somebody like Samsung saying, oh, no, we know better now because we are profitable with this. Well, you're profitable because you're piggybacking off the work that Google did for Android. You're just the one raking is what I meant to say.
Yeah, that's fine.
All the profits from it, and Google is getting diddly squat, right?
Right.
You're getting the better end of that deal.
Yeah.
It is hubris to think that you're going to out-Google
Right.
building your own Android fork.
Yeah, it'd be
Not going to
interesting.
freaking happen.
Yeah. And their TV sets are amazing, but their operating system on their TV sets is just slow and...
Samsung has the operational efficiency to rival Apple, and that's where they shine. They can build amazing,
better products.
great
On
products.
a hardware basis, they're much better.
Than Apple?
Yeah, they have twice the... Now the latest S4 is twice as fast as the 5. So
I don't know about that, but
the processor
I'm even
is.
content just saying
I
they're
mean,
on par in operational.
They provide the screens to Apple, so...
Right, but the whole product. If I'm holding a piece of Apple iPhone in my hand versus the Galaxy 4, there's certainly a preference for me.
Yeah,
Anyway, it doesn't
I
even
agree.
matter.
I agree. If
They're
you're,
making
if
it.
you're design, if you're into
Yes.
design, it's going to be slightly better.
Who cares?
Yeah.
What matters is that they're doing it good enough that they can turn a profit doing it, which is something nobody else in that space is able to do. So they deserve huge accolades of doing that. But I think they're terribly mistaken if they are not attributing part of that to the fact that they could outsource all their software development to Google and people who actually built a decent OS. Android is much better now than it was when I tried it in gingerbread days or whatever.
Yeah, Android was so bad, and now it's good.
It's gotten a lot.
It's good.
It's good enough.
Yeah, I would say that's right. Good enough. Right. It's
Right.
so which means it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
So using the word good is like good enough really means like saying okay. It's like a 7. I
Yeah.
put on a 7. Like Apple's
Which
like a
is
10.
fine for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
that is a real threat. Like Apple finally has a true competitor for a large part of the market that just doesn't care about that end
I'm
level
fascinated by the
fascination.
Chromebook. You see that new Chromebook they have that has like
Yeah.
a resolution that's much better and much faster and LTE built into
And
it.
it costs
$1,500. Yeah, but I mean, I think there's a
a
segment of the market that doesn't really care. But that looks to me like, if that's like their second effort, like what is their 5th effort going to be?
Yeah,
I
that's
kinda-
the funny thing for me. Google is the perfect example of having so much wealth that you can squander all your opportunities.
What do you think of the
on
Google-
hobbies and shit that doesn't matter? What has Google done?
They don't know how to spend it.
AdSense, that actually
YouTube.
turned out to
YouTube.
They bought that. And
Oh,
also,
right. What
how
have
much
they
is
done
that
internally?
actually attributing to the bottom line?
Oh,
I know
a lot. 5 billion maybe. I'm thinking 4 or 5 billion. Yeah.
in profits.
No, top line. I don't think they're trying to be profitable on it. I think they're trying to lock up the video market for the next couple of years. So I think it's
And
a
then we're
wise
back to
investment.
talking the same thing. How long does that freaking take? YouTube is from what?
Well,
04?
they got it in they have YouTube, they announced has 1 billion users a month. It has the same number of users as Facebook now.
I do not give a shit about those numbers
Yeah.
unless they translate into profits over
Right.
some amount of timeline where I'm not dead before it ends.
Yeah. No, I think they're going to go for like maybe a couple more years of trying to penetrate the globe. Like they want to win the world like they did with search. And then I think they're going to start cranking it up, just like they did with search. They started cranking it up. They
am
got
very curious to
market
see
share.
whether that thing is ever going to play out. Like it freaking happened once in commercial history where somebody went out with like search engine technology that was great. They got a lot of fans, and then boom, AdWords was a perfect fit for intent and time and blah blah blah.
I don't think
doesn't happen in any other business that you can just sit back, kick back 10 years. Oh yeah, Mr. Moneybags, this is now time to turn on the profit spigot.
Yeah, I think they can.
Happen.
I think they can. I think they can. You know why? Because when you go on YouTube, how many times do you see a pre-roll ad? Like one's out every 3. So if they wanted to, they could triple it, and they would probably kill some level of consumption to have to watch an ad every time. But
I'm very skeptical of the argument that if they wanted to,
you wouldn't think about the Google Glass.
Billions of dollars.
What about Google Glass?
Who the fuck do not want to make billions of dollars? If you just want to.
If you've already got so much.
Exactly. That is exactly my point.
So they should just keep
if you already have so much, you lose the discipline to make profitable products. And I think that syndrome has struck not only Google, but Microsoft too. Yeah. When you have cash cows that are just spewing money, like there's no tomorrow, that you cannot spend it all.
Impacts your ability to make product.
Yes. And that is why
that's like psychological.
Yes. And that's why Apple is unique. That they continue to launch products where they actually give a shit about whether they're profitable, which to me is the clearest indication that they continue to make shit that people want. People are willing. Apple's new stuff is so good that people continue to want to pay for it.
Overpay compared to the products in the market.
Yes. So they must be phenomenal, right?
Right, or they wouldn't overpay.
Microsoft, Google, a lot of these other companies continue to push stuff out where they're so insecure about whether the value is truly there that they're not willing to slap a price tag on it, which in turn sort of corrupts their ability to make great shit because it never gets measured. It's kind of like always putting in reports, never getting a grade back. Like I must be the most amazing writer in the world. I write all these novels and I put them in the shelf. I never put them in.
You do see that with the Kindle Fire as an example. Like people pay. They make no profit off Kindle Fire.
Right.
So therefore, they don't know actually how good that product is, and the team making it never has to have their feet held to the fire of having a $359 price to compete with the iPad Mini. They get to compete
Absolutely.
at $199 or $249. They get to compete at a third off.
And that to me just
which makes them weaker competitors.
An inherent insecurity in your own ability to make great stuff. And Amazon, you can say, like, I'm puzzled that continues because they're not making any profit. I'm more fascinated by the centers where they're gushing profit out, like Microsoft and Google. They're gushing profit out of things they made 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, lasting products.
Lasting products that are so good that they're never again under the pressure that they actually have to make stuff that's so great that people will be willing to pay at market prices, including margins.
You know what it's like? It's like a basketball player in the NBA who's such a good shooter. Like, I don't know, you follow basketball or not as a... So anyway, if you're in basketball and you're a really good shooter, you can shoot the ball, then when you go back to play defense, you don't play defense that hard.
Right.
Because you're like, well, I can make up for it on the offensive side. I'll just shoot, and I'll score some more points, and we'll beat them on score as opposed to defense.
Right.
And the teams that become great and the people who become LeBron James are the ones who play both parts of the game.
Absolutely.
Hey, how much do you work? You seem to me like you have a real great lifestyle. How many hours how many weeks a year you think you work?
That's the funny thing. So,
and how many hours a week?
When 37 Signals was first sort of coming up and making some waves and so on, the number one criticism that people had, you're just running a lifestyle business. And that was supposed to be an
lifestyle business making $100 million.
It was just...
You're not saying the amount. I'm saying it's $100 million. That's the whisper number.
Jeez.
Between 50 and 100.
I'm not getting into that. But the funny thing was, it was an insult, right? People said that to you as whatever you do, whatever you say, it doesn't matter, you're just running a lifestyle business. And I would take that and say, fuck yes, I'm running a lifestyle business. I want a business that's so great that it is part of my lifestyle. I want to continue doing it. I've designed my lifestyle around being able to continue to do this.
So how many hours a week do you think you work? In all honesty.
We say 40 hours.
But you think you only work 40 hours? Like you check your email, you're counting everything?
I don't really know.
You don't even know.
Some weeks I certainly work a lot less. I built my lifestyle around being able to work at 37 Signals for the rest of my life. So that's how it's designed. And if that's the case, if I'm never going to cash out and live on the beach and so forth, I have to do all the things that I want to do in my life. I have to do them while I still work. So I have to make it compatible. I found that the 40 hours-ish a week is a good fit. In the summer...
In the beginning, you were doing many more, though. When you were starting the company?
I was doing many less.
Really?
That's the funny thing. When we first started Basecamp, we were doing the no-risk approach, right? So we had all the consulting stuff.
Right.
The amount of hours we actually put into 37 Signals, the product business, was far less
But you as an
than anybody
individual
else.
then were doing the consulting business and building Basecamp. So that was a lot of work.
It was, but we were still trying to keep that to a normal pace.
You feel
I don't
like
believe
you're missing
in
out, though,
120 hours.
No,
or
I don't
80
believe
hours,
that either.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't believe in overwork because I think it becomes a habit. And I don't think you can shake these habits.
Ah.
People who invest the massive amounts of hours in the beginning, they get addicted to that feeling, and they can't let it go once they don't have to anymore.
I agree with that, yeah. I agree. I've actually had to change that. I'm in the office probably 40, 50 hours a week, and then I probably do a little bit of work, on my phone or
Sure.
whatever. But I've pared it down from being one of those 70, 80-hour-a-week guys.
Right.
Because I have a daughter, and I want to live a little bit. But no, do you feel like you guys have missed out on being bigger at times? Like when you see Evernote or Dropbox become multi-billion-dollar companies, and
Right.
your company, if it got bought, would probably get bought for hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know if it would get bought for billions of dollars. So when you look at that, do you ever say, dang, as successful as you are, we could have been the $5 billion Dropbox or the $2 billion Evernote or whatever?
No. And the reason why is that that's such a fleeting moment. If you look at all the research of what it is that makes people happy, these individual achievements, like, oh, I won a $5 billion payout, right? They last for a very short amount of time. And you know what? Then it's fucking Monday again, and you have to do what it is that you do.
Right.
And nobody's happy just sitting around on their couch thinking, oh, remember like 2 years ago when I got $5 billion? I'm not saying money doesn't alleviate things or make things better and so on, but it's a very shallow scale. There's sort of like a cap. There's that piece of research out saying after you make, what, $65,000 a year,
Your happiness decreases, right? Or it stays the same.
Additional salary or whatever doesn't contribute that heavily to your happiness anymore.
Right.
And the game I'm in is maximum happiness for maximum amount of time.
Right.
And what I found is one of the things that makes me really happy is to work on stuff that I care about with people I really like working with the independence of nobody telling me what the fuck to do.
Right.
When I can just sit back and say, I'm going to write what I want to write, I want to say what I want to say, I can make products I want to make and not make all the shit that I don't want to do, that is the epicenter of happiness.
Yeah.
The fact that I can then do it and then live comfortably, like that's a very nice bonus. But if I was to trade one of those things, would I give up I feel like extreme luxury that I have to work at a company of 37 people where I love working with all the people I work with. I love working what I work on. Would I give all that up for somebody to give me a lot of money and then like, oh, now you have to work in the bowels of Google or whatever?
Yeah.
You
kill yourself, yeah. So what is the, what do you think the future is for 37 Signals? I mean, you're going to add a lot more products, or do you think you just keep iterating on the products you have? I mean, how do you guys decide?
It's funny because we've been talking about this internally recently, and it sort of waxes and wanes. Sometimes we feel like we have too much stuff, we got to prune it down, so we prune it down, as we just talked about. We shut a few products for new customers.
Right.
And then, of course, once we prune down the tree, we see all these other branches that can then
feng
pop out.
shui. It's like you cleaned out your house.
Yeah, exactly. Now you can sort of see some new ways, and we're going to try some new things. So we have a couple of product ideas that we want to play with. But at the same time, I'm humble enough to realize that maybe Basecamp is the best idea I've ever had.
Really? You think
As a company, maybe Basecamp is the best thing we ever had. We're never going to top it. If you look at the history of companies, we were just talking about Google.
They usually have one, maybe
two.
two.
The best idea Google ever had was AdSense. I don't think they're ever going to top it.
Yeah.
I think the best idea Microsoft ever had was Windows and Office. I don't think they're ever going to top it.
Right. They got two.
They're going to try, right?
Right.
Like
well, Xbox pretty good.
My sense of serenity comes from the fact that I could be okay if that was true.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are just hardwired to like, I have to continuously top myself. If I'm not beating what I did 5 years ago, I'm a failure. I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
If I still do Basecamp 30 years from now, that's not a failure to me. That's in many ways the greatest success of all. Enduring, sustainable, long-term success. How many companies actually achieve that Almost none. Like if you look at the churn in the S&P 500, it's huge.
Yeah.
You look at any given moment, it looks like any company is, that company is of course going to live forever, right?
Yeah, or it's going to be disintermediated tomorrow.
Right, exactly. So, and this doesn't turn out like that. So to me, a lot of the satisfaction I derive on a business sense is the sticking with it part.
Where do you get your
Basecamp is almost 10 years old.
That's wild.
10 years old.
And people have used it every day for 10 years. You have
And
customers.
they're happier than ever about using it. There are more customers than ever. Ruby on Rails, almost 10 years old. How much technology gets to live 10 years?
Yeah.
And people still
It's a
be
great
passionate
legacy
about
for
using
you.
it.
You're right. If you got hit by a bus, God forbid, it's good legacy.
That's good enough.
Where do you get your philosophy
right now,
on? Where does your philosophy come for happiness and stuff like that? You read the books, or you just have read about it online, or you just have lived enough life to? Because how old are you now?
I'm 33.
33. So I mean, I think you got to Denmark, as they say in the economics business. You got to serenity pretty young. I mean, how do you think you got there so quick?
Well, I think part of it is I had a very compressed experience working at both a bunch of shitty companies, so I knew, okay, that's not how I want to run my company. I'm so thankful for having lived through the dot-com boom and bust.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the defining business era for me, seeing that cycle, because it made me see things so incredibly clearly. I got to work at an incubator in 99, 2000. I got to see
Vertical Net? Which one?
What was it called?
Internet Capital Group?
No, it was in Denmark.
I forgot the name.
Pray for.
Yeah.
Pray for, a Danish incubator, worked on this gaming site, and I had a good time, but I learned so much from that, right? Then I also got to befriend a number of people who went through sort of the traditional trajectory, right? Build big company, sell it, and supposedly happiness ever after. And I saw that happiness ever after didn't arrive.
No.
So I saw the fact that when people were reminiscing about their happiest moments, they were talking about, oh, do you remember when we were just 30 people and we were making the best products of our lives and we didn't have any VCs on our back, or we weren't public, the markets weren't clamoring for us. And they tell these stories as though that inevitably had to end.
Yeah,
and
why did it have to end?
Why?
You could have stayed in college forever. You could have stayed there.
Yes, you could stay in that place. And that's the same thing when, like, I've been pretty harsh on Groupon. We've talked about that, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at the
Andrew had a
CEO,
great time in the early days, right? He was loving it.
He must have had a hell in the last 2 years. I would not want that on my worst enemy.
No, terrible. Can you imagine the pressure?
Stresses he's under.
Ugh, he must have been puking like every night when he got home.
And like, why would I want that? Why would I trade something so good for something like that? Just
the
because there's a bigger
pursuit of growth. You know, it's like people get caught up in it.
Yes, and I think that's my greatest acceptance. My greatest acceptance is if I can just eke out, like beat inflation plus 1%.
Right.
I'm good. I'm good right here. I don't need anything else, because I think that plateau, it happens really quickly, and I've reached that a while ago. I don't have to work anymore.
Right.
So I can just, the work I can put in is because I actually want to do it, right?
Right.
And that's about optimizing the whole thing as the machine of, if I have to be here for the rest of my freaking life, it has to be damn good. I don't have to be here. I can leave tomorrow, and I'm going to be just fine.
Makes it easy on makes it easy on the people you're hiring, because they know that the bosses love what they do. They know that they're there for the right reasons. And it does make it a lot easier.
We're all in it together too, because I think there's a lot of sort of cynicism in startup cultures, that you have the founders, and then you have whoever comes in after the founders, and the founders are in it to get that exit and out, right? And what did the employees get out of it?
They learned
maybe something, but why did they have to have such a shitty experience why they did it? Because a lot of startups, I mean,
they're grinding it out.
Yeah, they're grinding it out. It's not necessarily a pleasurable experience, the work itself, right? And I think you can design a work setup where the work experience itself is pleasurable. Like, if I'm going to spend 8 hours a day thinking about 37 Signals, Basecamp, blah, 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 I want that to be fun.
Yeah.
Like, is that really such an outrageous, unreasonable demand? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, for me, the other things are just hygiene factors. Okay, there's enough money in the bank that we can pay payroll all the time. I'm happy with the proceeds that we're extracting as owners of the company. Like, that's fine. That's taken care of. Now I'm free to worry about, like, hey, what can we do to improve the product? What can I do with Ruby on Rails? What can we do with all these things? And that's just such a liberation. And to risk trading that just to those, increasing those hygiene factors. So you sell the company, and now you can fly in a private jet. Whoopity-doo. Everything turns into every day. And I think that's perhaps the
You got to
greatest
fly on a couple more
realization.
private jets. It's pretty cool.
I'll take your word for it.
You don't get to fly in enough private jets. That is the one piece I will tell you is pretty cruel. Cool.
I'm not gonna lie. If I was a billionaire, I would fly private.
Right.
I'm not sort of taking myself out of enjoying the good things of life. Absolutely.
Right. You're just not like, why would I risk such a great legacy and so much stuff that you've made to get the private jet quicker and then be on the private jet and hating life? Like Andrew Mason, I'm sure flew private a lot the last couple of years.
Right.
And he probably flew private and was miserable for the whole flight. And now, you know what?
Yep.
I don't know. I think the sad part of that whole story is I don't think he got to take any money out. I think
he did.
very little compared to the other
Yes,
guys.
for sure.
That partner he had, who is a little bit fugazi.
Yes.
People have like some concerns about him
Right.
in the press, and like he took out hundreds of millions. Who knows what Andrew Mason was able to net out?
Yep.
You know, I'm sure it's life changing, and I don't want to. You know, I'm sure that actually, you know who got screwed the most in that situation? The employees who got their stock price at whatever billions of dollars, and now that stock will never recover.
Singa, look at those guys too.
Yeah, that was
all
terrible.
those guys who put in. Again, you had like an
miserable
environment built up,
couple of years.
shitty environment. Every single account I've seen is that Singa is one of the worst places in the world to work. Right, it's a crappy place to work, but people put in and slaved away because they thought that golden nugget was going to be at the end of the rainbow, and then boom, the rainbow's gone.
Yeah.
And it's just fucking pissing down, and there's no fucking gold, and you're like, shit. I just wasted 2 years of my life slaving for that idiot, and I have nothing to show for it. Like it's just not a trade.
He seems to have
taking most of the time.
he seems to have rebuilt the culture now and is focused on that employee, stuff.
Good,
here we go.
good
Question
luck to
from
that.
chat. His partner on Groupon on board. Partner on Group on
Jason
board?
was on the board of Groupon.
Oh, was he really?
Yep.
Oh.
And he was on the board to help with the product.
I think I remember that. Yeah. So
And just before things started going hyper crazy, Groupon replaced him with, I think, Howard Schultz. Because they wanted somebody
nice person to get replaced with, but
billionaire experience.
God, they
or
could
whatever.
have really used Jason's philosophy.
Yeah.
He's a very unique guy, huh?
Yeah, I really
What
like
makes
working
him
with
so
Jason.
successful?
What?
What do you think makes him so successful?
I think he has a very long-term view too. So I think that we share. Actually, I think he has an even longer-term view than I have. I sometimes get impatient about stuff, and he has more of a long-term view of like, all right, let's just try a bunch of different things. Let's find the very best one, and so on. We pair each other well there.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was when Jason was still involved with Groupon, I used to be a huge Groupon cheerleader. I thought they had it made. I thought when I first heard the model, I was like, this is genius. You don't have inventory. You get half of the ticket. You must be raking it in like there's no tomorrow. And that was exactly the sort of feeders we were getting out of the company. Like, oh, we're massively profitable. Lekowski even said, oh, we can be massively profitable tomorrow.
Yeah.
And everybody was really proud of that being a Chicago story. Then gap numbers come to light, and you're like, what? What the fuck? And you felt betrayed. I felt betrayed. And I know that's ridiculous. Like, Groupon didn't promise me shit. But I felt betrayed on the behalf of sort of the Chicago community and being proud of something and being, in some ways, a cheerleader for it without seeing all these dark sides of it. And perhaps that's why I'm being extra harsh on it, just because, like, I saw something that I thought was great, and then it showed its ugly face. Anyway.
Question from the audience. Did the success of 37 Signals set unrealistic expectations for bootstrappers? Or does it, I guess?
Well,
I don't know about that.
No, because look at the success of 37 Signals. It's taking us freaking
10 years.
14 years since 99. The company was established.
What you're saying is it's another overnight success.
Yeah, exactly.
14 years in the making.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you look at the early days, like the first year of Basecamp, any self-respecting YC company startup would think this is a failure. Let's shut down Basecamp right away. You guys are not growing at the, I don't know, they were talking about something like if you don't grow at like 7% a week or
that Paul
something,
Graham, like startups exist to grow.
Right, exactly.
I didn't like that post.
By that definition, Basecamp was a fucking failure.
Twitter
We
was
should
a
shut it
failure.
down.
Twitter was a failure.
Twitter's been around for 7 years now too.
Well, Engadget was a failure too.
Right.
I mean, we didn't have like huge traffic in the beginning. We had to wait around for 6 months, and then we came up with this idea to do the Steve Jobs keynote live.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden we had success. I mean, we would have shut it down.
Basecamp didn't even have that inflection point. We never really had a point where it was like, it was going ba 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 ba, and then whoosh.
Yeah.
We just went ba 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 for 10 years.
Right.
The beauty and magic of compound interest.
Yeah.
Growth.
Yeah.
We slug it out slowly and being happy with making X plus inflation.
Do you have a ton of competitors now? Does that make your life harder? Because when you started, there was no software as a service. Like,
we have tons of competitors. We always had tons of competitors. Our biggest competitor is email. People not doing anything.
Yeah.
But we also have tons of direct competitors. So people making
copied
like
Basecamp.
Yes.
People have photocopied it.
There's been a number of those, and then there's also been other ones that are good, like Citrix bought Podio, sort of in similar-ish space.
Yeah.
But I think that's the magic of this too, is that there's a lot of room in this world.
Yeah.
Like people often talk about, oh yeah, if you go into a marketplace, the number one guy is going to get 80%, and then the number two guy is going to get 15%, and then the rest share the last 5%. Do you know what? In project management, if I'm just part of that sharing the last 5%, that's fine.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
Fine. Exactly. It's totally fine. And I think that we had just not only realistic expectations, we probably had like lower than realistic expectations. We had very modest expectations.
Right, because you were making a light product.
Light product. We didn't invest
Easy to use.
a lot of money into making it. We were 3 people, worked on it for 6 calendar months, blah, blah, blah. So we kept things just to a minimum. And then we just made it better and made it a little better and kept at it. And I think that's perhaps our one of the big moats that we have right now, is that we've kept at it. There's not a lot of software that's survived 10 years and still is in fighting fit form.
Yeah.
That people can trust. Like, you look at all these pieces of software, Google Reader, people just talked about. A lot of the software, they just got shut down and the users got kicked out, right?
Yeah. Do you have to rewrite everything? How many times have you done a total like ground up rewrite?
One time.
One time.
We did it a year and a half ago, which is usually the cardinal sin of
the death.
The death.
People say that's the death of it.
Absolutely.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. I mean, it was, in some ways, it was a little bit of an inflection point. We had a code base that had been around for almost 10 years, and we said, we're not going to rewrite it. So that was the thing. Rewrites, they do fail. If you just take exactly the same product and then like, oh, let's use fancier, newer technology and recreate exactly the same thing, what you recreate is the same look and feel with all the bugs that you fixed for 10 years. So that sucks. Nobody gives a shit what your infrastructure's like. They just like, hey, why the fuck does this have all these bugs now?
Yeah.
So what we did instead was reimagined. Basecamp was going to be something slightly different. It was going to have some different opinions. It was going to have different features. It was going to have a different tech. It was still going to be about project management.
Right.
The core of the idea was still going to be there, but it was not just going to be the same thing.
Right.
So I think that's why that worked.
Interesting. And what's next for you? What kind of space are you looking at? What excites you?
Well, I'm always excited about productivity, improving companies from within. We're working on a couple of things right now that are around improving companies. Everything we do is born out of what we feel like we need ourselves. So we're now 36 people, and I know that's laughably little compared to, that's not even 10% of the Yahoo remote workforce, right? So it's a small group of people, but I really care about efficiency, and I care about making the very best with that. So currently we have a big sort of theme in the company. How can we make the company better? What are all the angles, like the managers making better? How can we have better rapport back and forth and all this stuff? We're trying to corral all these ideas and turn it into a product. We'll see if that works.
That's an interesting concept,
and see if
just basically there's project management, but then there's company management.
Yes.
I just invested in a company called 15.5. Have you seen that? 15.5? Take a look at that. It's basically people get to say how they're feeling and what they're doing. And it gives like a feedback loop. It's almost like getting like a mini 360-degree review every week kind of a thing. Just more reality. But it's real time is really...
It's in that category of things.
Yeah.
So
it's a very touchy-feely category. Like
it is, and you have to be sensitive to a lot of this stuff.
It's almost like asking people, like, how do you feel is like, it's almost like sometimes distracting. Like,
yep, it is.
Like, I don't want to stir things up. Like, and is it my job to ask you how you feel? I sometimes think as like the CEO, am I supposed to ask you like, what your wins, what's frustrating you? Like was one of the questions we had. I'm like, do I really need to know what's frustrating you? And if I ask you what's frustrating to you, do you feel that you need to have the obligation to tell me something and make something up?
Well, I think don't ask if you're not willing to do something about it. So that's rule number one.
Yeah.
A lot of companies are not willing to change the fundamental things that annoy employees, right? So that's part of it, and I think that's why this is interesting, right? Because to me, an organization is like a software program. You can rewrite parts of it. You have to make sure that the whole cell works really well, that it's not have bugs all, it doesn't have
Subroutines,
performance
everything, yeah.
problems and all these things. But you can tweak and tinker with it. It's like a code base that lives over a very long time. So
I like
whatever
that idea.
improvements that you make in it, usually you reap benefit over a long time.
I love hearing the things that annoy the employees on a very tiny base. The smaller the annoyance,
Right.
the more I like it.
Well,
like when
the
people
more-
tell
it's
me,
easier to do something about it too.
well, it's easy to do something about it because you get an easy win in a way. But
Right.
it's also, it's like if people are upset about the parking situation here, which is our biggest issue.
Yep.
One of the other issues was parking, noise.
Yep.
You know, people laughing in the office. We're like,
Work from home.
work from home, but yeah, exactly. The laughing, you know, whatever, quiet
Right.
space versus
Yep.
loud space,
Yep.
and then like coffee or tea or soy milk or
Right.
the difference between soy and almond and 2%. I love that. That to me, I love that shit.
Well-
That to me is the best because when they do that, I'm like, okay, that means everything else is going pretty good,
Right.
and I can solve those problems.
Yep.
I
Yep.
can get better coffee.
Right.
You know, that's easy.
Yep.
Love it.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's why it's a good feedback loop because managers, at least good ones, get a kick out of making things better for their employees, and obviously employees get a kick out of improving their workplace, feel like they have a voice and feel like they have empowerment to actually make an impact on where they work. And that's exactly as we were talking about in the beginning. When you don't have these things, when employees don't feel like they have a voice, when they don't feel like they have an impact on the company at large, then that's when demotivation and all these other things set in, and all of a sudden, boom, before you know it, you wake up and you're fucking Marissa May and you're in charge of Yahoo, and you're like, shit, how did I end up here?
Yeah, nobody likes their job.
Right, exactly.
Everybody's pissed.
Right.
Yeah. I have this idea for a April Fool's Kickstarter. I can say it because we're an hour and 20 minutes into the show. But it would be a watch.
Uh-huh.
And you, as CEO founder, you go to your computer and you just say, you type the question, how are you feeling? And you
Yep.
type in the, Survey Monkey style response.
Right.
And all of a sudden, everyone in your office gets a little vibrate, and it says, how are you feeling right now? A scale of 1 to 10. And everybody does. And the CEO looks, and it's like, oh my God, it's a 5.5. Oh, it's a 9.8. What happened? You know? And then
just before lunch or it's just after lunch?
Exactly. But I was thinking like this would be like a great Gen Y thing. Like parents could give it to their kids and like just be asking them like every hour on the hour how they're feeling. And then when they say like they're not feeling good, I could just like send like one of like 20 canned responses back. You are a unique, special snowflake. There has never been anybody like you and never will be again. Boop. The person, oh, I feel great now. I'm a unique snowflake. All right, this has been an amazing episode. Again, what a great rambling, awesome. You never can tell if it's a great episode or if it's a good episode, but I think it's a great one. David, great to have you back on the program 3 years later. If you haven't seen episode 46, it's linked to right here. Like, click my head, Brandis. When they click my head, my big fat head, click my head, and you go to episode 46 if you want to see it. We'll do the YouTube annotation on that. And everybody can follow David at DHH. I suggest following because he interacts with the audience a lot on Twitter. You get the Twitter.
I love Twitter.
I love Twitter. It's so great. It's just like I love the fact that there's like access to everybody. I was watching somebody interact with somebody famous. Who was it? It was Michael Robertson from MP3.com. If you remember Michael, and he was interacting with somebody famous. It was either like Mike Tyson or whoever.
Right.
And he was just like going back and forth, like trading barbs with them about something. And it was
magic.
like, wow.
It really is magic. And I think the magic is part of that constraint. Like if somebody sends me an email, a long email.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, all right, I got to read it all, and I will, but it takes some time. I love being able to interact with just 140 characters. Boom, I can write a quick reply to them. Boom, I can write a quick reply.
Yeah,
and the other way around, too. One of the funny things was I went to Alenia recently. It was a restaurant in Chicago, and they have a dress code. I fucking hate dress codes, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So you can't get me in a suit for the life of me. I've been in the suit 3 times over the last 10 years.
2 weddings and a funeral.
One was for a cover of a magazine.
Okay.
Which
Congrats.
is hilarious. And what was the other one? One was for actually going to a restaurant in Seattle. I forget what, Callis or something else like that.
Blazer required.
And now they wanted me to wear a suit to Alenia, right?
Blazer or tie or both? Just blazer.
I think at least blazer.
Yeah, at least blazer.
But I was ranting about this, right? So what happened? First, the owner of the restaurant in Seattle, where I went to with a suit and tie, I basically said, I had to show up in a suit and tie, and the food wasn't good enough to warrant that. And he was like, whoa, we've gotten better since then, and so forth, right? And the other one was I think the owner of Alenia saying, well, like, this is really important because otherwise people are going to walk in flip-flops and wife beaters or something. I was like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. You could say no flip-flops and wife beaters.
Right. Right. Anyway, it was so fun that you could put
interact
this out there
with the person.
and you interact with people. Like
who normally would not have that feedback.
No. Would I get into a conversation with
it's weird.
These owners of restaurants somewhere?
No,
No, because I wouldn't just send them an email about it, right?
No.
It wouldn't happen. And you get all these spur-of-the-moment things. And Twitter, to me, is just magic. I mean,
that's going to be here 20 years from now. Facebook, I'm not sure.
I could not care less about. I canceled my Facebook account 3 years ago or something like that.
Didn't look back. It's garbage. I get nothing out of Facebook.
Yep.
0.0. All right, David, it's been great to have you back on the program, and we'll talk again soon.
Awesome.
I'm going to do the source bits thing. You can take off.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for coming by. What a great interview. Yeah.
Take care.
Take care. Cheers. Once again, David brought the thunder. A lot of great opinions, a lot of great feedback. Really great having him on the program. And as promised, SourceBits is going to take us through. Hold on a second. Oh, there. Mark. Hey, Mark, are you there?
Hey, Jason.
Mark, with us? There you go. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Jason. How's it going?
Good. What'd you think of the David interview?
You know, it was great. Never like to follow someone like that, though.
Yeah, a little bit tough. I apologize for that. But hey, listen, we really tore it up at the event. What a great success the event was. And we really captured people's imagination with this crowdfunding app. Obviously, we were way ahead of the curve. SEC hasn't even approved crowdfunding, and we did this great simulation, and the company's got a lot of feedback. But how do you guys look at it? How does SourceBits look at the project, and how do you quantify success for it?
Well, I think for us it was really a big success, and the first thing we look at is how did it do for the startups. There were more than 2,000 downloads. There were funding commitments every 20 seconds during the event, and last we looked, we had on day 2 more than 7 million. I think we were up to more than 9 million in commitments in total. In launch dollars, which is really exciting. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, we talked about this back in September, and the SEC had a 6-month head start on us, and we were able to build the app, the back end, the leaderboard, and make it all work before they wrote their first rule. So
pretty good job. And wow, and the great success story is Gablet got their Gablet, who did a great job with this group collaborative event planning, which is a very cool product that captured a lot of people's imaginations. Very unique. They raised $200,000 to get their first commitment through the app.
Yeah, really exciting. The fact that we were actually able to not only make it work, but to make it work for the startups and get real commitments is just phenomenal.
And then TripTease got 2 investors from the app as well, which is incredible. We actually had commerce in a way. Now, I don't want to say we had commerce go through the app because I don't want to get sued by the SEC. We had leads occur through the app that then led to full due diligence that then led to. But, I mean, now, as crazy as this sounded when I came up with this idea, do you think next year, if the crowdfunding stuff is launched, that we will see millions of dollars actually go through the system and be invested in the companies $50 or $100 at a time?
I think there's every opportunity for that. I think the investors are out there who want to make those investments. There's a lot of excitement about it. I think the SEC's heel dragging has definitely cooled things off a little bit, but if they can pull things together, and I know that Congress is pushing hard to make that happen, I think we're going to see some of that happen. I think it's really pretty exciting. And the word I was getting and the buzz I was getting from people who had seen the app and actually used it was that they were excited to make real commitments when they had that opportunity.
Yeah, that's just amazing, amazing. I can't thank you guys enough for going on this journey with us, and I think next year is going to be the big win year. So I know I was like sort of putting you guys out on a limb to sort of build this, and you had an unrealistic time frame, and boy, did you guys crush it. I really, I can't thank you enough personally but really on behalf of the startups, because you guys jumped in, and it wasn't clear it was going to work, and it wasn't clear we had enough time. And I know you guys take quality very serious, but you got it done with quality. I know there's a lot of late nights for people, so I just personally thank you on behalf of the startups. It was just wonderful to have you guys as a partner. Yeah,
it was a great experience for us, and from our perspective too. I mean, it was obviously a win for SourceBits. Great exposure to be on the show and to be be working with you, and also real projects. I mean, we've got 5 or 6 projects that are in the pipeline with great companies, really interesting products, serious potential that came directly from what we're working on with you. So it just talks about the quality of the launch, and the TWiST audience is really phenomenal from start to finish working with you and your team.
Yeah, we have a great audience, and the audience is pretty serious about entrepreneurship. A lot of them, and this is the thing, you know, we've had this happen on the program. People have talked about this. You never know where your next customer is going to come from. You never know where your next investor is going to come from. Don't take anybody for granted. And that goes for SourceBits too. You could be talking to somebody at the launch festival, or somebody who just comes in across the transom, and all of a sudden they could turn into a major engagement for SourceBits, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We have actually a client that's at our offices today at our headquarters that's doing a 2-day discovery session, and we talked to them briefly before launch. They mentioned that they were coming up to launch, and then once they saw us up there and we get to sit down with them and actually meet them face to face, and have lunch and show them the app and everything else, it turned into a real relationship. And these are guys that called randomly after having seen the show, that you never would have necessarily thought this is going to be an immediate opportunity for us. So everybody out there who's making that effort to do what they're doing and taking it seriously,